Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us here on Tuesday's Terrors. Hi, Chris. How you doing, my friend?
Alan, Alan.
Seems like we just did this not too long
Yeah,
ago.
this is a short while ago in the future.
So that being said, if ladies and gentlemen who's joining us, if you haven't seen our last episode, it was actually on Sharknado. Oh my gosh, the chat room was flying, and I was laughing so hard that my wife literally goes, "Were you drinking during the show?" Because I was like, "No, I was just," they had me laughing so hard.
Nice.
So, if you get a chance, just swing back through the channel here, Grave Reviews. You can find it very easily at ampersand Thursday Night Frights will take you right directly to our channel. If you use Grave Reviews, it's about the fourth one down. Either way it goes, you might want to check that out. It was a lot of fun. Tonight we're doing Tuesday's Terrors, which is a high level, very conversational view on what we're watching. And this week was a very important anniversary for the horror and horror adjacent community. Um,
Absolutely.
we had The Crow, was
True.
released, 30 years ago. Ah, man, that makes me feel so old.
Yeah, me too, man.
Makes me feel so
uh,
old. Did you get the opportunity to see this in the theater, Chris?
yes, absolutely. This was one of those movies that I saw and then needed to see again, almost immediately.
Yeah.
This was it's almost like you have those movies that when you watch them, you're like, this is going to be iconic. This
There's
is going to be huge.
there's something special going on.
Yeah, this is a story that unless you were into deep into comics, you didn't know. You had no idea who this guy was, what his powers were, which he ended up having powers,
Yes,
based on the comic book by James O'Barr, and um, it just on screen, it was something different. It was dark, it was gritty,
it was.
and the way it was shot, it was supposed to be shot in black and white. That's what he wanted to shoot this in,
Of course,
with
the studio said,
no
"No."
way, no way. Which you get that black and white going on, but color splashes with his backstory, his flashbacks. Um,
Well, what they did to compensate, which they did without the studio knowing, is they pulled every green out of the film.
yeah,
So it made it feel like it was a lot darker than it
yeah. It was
actually.
like a monochrome with
Mhm.
overlays that it added to that darkness. I think that's one thing we didn't really get in a lot of movies is a dark story with
Mhm.
it being told visually dark
Yeah,
and
and
darkness.
the thing that I thought was, interesting about this, the reason why it was purposely filmed so dark, and told such a dark story is James O'Barr, when writing the original Crow, comic or graphic novel, as if you will,
Hmm.
wrote it as a way to deal with his own grief because his love of his life died in a car accident with where she was struck by a drunk driver, which is where a lot of the themes from this movie came from. A lot of people mistakenly call this a revenge film, and
It's
while
not
it absolutely well, while revenge is a subplot, the
right.
main and I love the fact that he said this. Obar said that this movie is a movie that, says that love transcends all things,
It's
even
eternal.
it is
It's
eternal.
eternal.
And it says so even in the film. The very last thing that's said is, in the movie at the very end I used to think that buildings burned and people died and it was forever, but I have found that love is eternal. Love is always. And
Right.
it's such a wonderful, um you take this very violent for its time, very violent movie
Mhm.
and wrap it, in a package that says to you, "Here you go, audience. Let me show you what eternal love can be."
showing these this eternal love through flashbacks. Eric Draven comes back. It's the year anniversary of his death, and you're kind of thrown into where he has no idea what's going on, and he's reliving pain of these memories of what happened to his fiance at the time.
Mhm.
It's that these harsh, you can feel the pain that he is feeling and the
Yes.
love he's feeling throughout
Yes.
this movie. The
Yes.
the the moments they had, when he proposed, the moments of just like she tried to cook and things got burned and he's like, let's go to a restaurant. It's those little things you get through this movie, like they loved each other.
It's
Right.
those types of things that when you're watching a movie and you're like, "Oh my god, it burnt," he didn't throw a fit. He's like, "It's okay, babe. Let's just go to a restaurant." That's the kind of
Right.
thing that we would do as
Oh yeah.
young couples, and it allowed you to start to see yourself in Eric's shoes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They were generic yet specific to where you could easily, if you were in love and you were married, you would have these steps, you would have these moments, these
Yep,
memories, and you feel that pain because that's what he's feeling. It's not
yep,
like that moment coming over him where they did something lovely. It's a pain of
yep.
having that memory branded on
Which is really cool the way they did that because like we said, they showed all the present time, right? There's no greens. They did a monochromatic. There was a lot of, dark blues and blacks and
you. Ooh,
grays.
reds and
And
red.
red. Red was especially when anything that had to do with revenge was definitely in red in color. But when they showed the flashback, it was a lot of oranges. I don't know if you noticed that or not.
Yep.
And they and very vibrant colors. And it was funny because um Eric okay, so for those of you who may or may not know, Eric died, right, early on. His wife, fiance they were due to be married the next day on Halloween. They
Yep.
both they both get killed. And as they're showing the movie, telling the story through Eric's perspective, everything is he's dead and being resurrected. So everything is gray, blues, as we said, and reds when it's revenge. But when thinking back to when he was alive, it's more vibrant than it was
Right.
at the time because that's the way he sees it.
Right.
Very well done. Such a fantastic little minor artistic touch that made this
Yeah.
movie go pop and as a viewer go, "Wow,
And it's a
that."
testament to Brandon in
Yes.
this because James O'Barr originally did not want him at cast as Eric Draven. He felt that he was known for his kung fu movies and he didn't
Martial
want a
arts
kung
films
fu
and
movie.
mhm.
And when he showed up on set and saw Brandon in full makeup, which by the way he did himself and then slept in
Yeah.
because he wouldn't have which is like a cool tidbit fact.
Yep.
But saw him in makeup and saw his take on the character of Eric Draven and carrying like word for word in some spots from the graphic novel
Yeah.
over and was like, you
Brandon
know what? He's the guy. That's it.
Yeah,
That's who I
Brandon
want.
definitely did his homework as far as like, the novel is concerned, the graphic novel, the comic book, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Um, at 28 years old, he'd already, like you said, he'd already starred in several films, but they were all B-level kung fu movies. And Brandon, being Bruce Lee's son, did not want to follow in his father's footsteps in the vein of I just want to be known as a martial arts actor. I want to express
Right.
myself beyond that. And if you'll notice the fight scenes in this movie where he could have pulled that martial arts background out, he fought the way Eric Draven fought. He did not fight the way that
Right.
Brandon Lee would fight, which I thought was a great touch. He knew what he knows what he's doing,
Yeah.
but he curtailed it to a completely different style. And okay, so as someone who studied Wing Chun,
Hmm.
which is the style that Bruce Lee based his Jeet Kune Do on, and therefore Brandon Lee studied. I was looking for that
Yeah.
and didn't see it, and was
Mhm.
like, and was not disappointed, but was impressed.
Right. Um, but this character, the Crow, is basically invulnerable.
Yes.
His life force is held together by the Crow itself.
Hmm.
And he played this off as more or less of an overpowering nature when it
Yeah.
comes to the fight scenes.
Yes.
It was blocking, yes, what they're doing, but able to turn it around in a brutal way where you're not looking for a punch or a kick. It was, using the weapons against them
Yes.
or spinning away, in letting the bad guy screw himself up.
Well, yeah, and I love that, when he fought Tintin,
Mm,
in this, and Tintin was uh, the typical at the time, "I'm the first one to go," right? If you know what
right.
I'm talking about.
Yep. Yep.
Tintin was a knife specialist, so it was really cool to see that, Eric Draven, as the Crow, allowed him to use his knives against allow Tintin to use his knives against Eric, but for Eric to turn those knives back on him. I was really impressed with that because unlike the novel where the Crow woke up from his slumber
Mhm.
knowing everything there was to know about his powers. In the movie, they chose to allow Brandon Lee's character Eric to slowly discover them, and I think that was a smart move for the movie. So when he was fighting Tintin, he wasn't exactly sure exactly
Yeah.
what he had going. I love the fact that he fell off the building and landed
In the beginning, oh, the laugh.
and and started.
That was so
Oh,
cool. It's that haunting laugh for the bad guy, like he's not a good dude. He brutalized this woman and killed her, thought nothing of it, sold
mhm.
her stuff, could not care. He is the epitome of the villain.
Yeah,
And to
and,
freak that guy out, that's awesome.
and some of the lines, he's got some great lines in this.
Every kill has a great quote through it,
Oh,
like
yeah.
victims aren't we all?
Yeah.
That with Tintin, that's a haunting one that
Uh-huh.
he sits with Tintin that I really loved. And it's just this movie has so many moments with um, the little girl Shelly and their interaction and to where now he feels like he's got to protect her and he kind of follows her around. And that moment of pulling her away from a car that he couldn't stop, he wouldn't be able to do it. And it's almost like you get that I know this because if it was something intentional or evil, I would know this. So
Exactly.
he didn't do it on purpose, and it can't rain all the time.
I
That line.
That line is great, and I'll tell you what I loved about this is, in the flashbacks, you discover that, he and his wife had a special relationship, especially his wife had a special relationship with this young lady, because her mother is, up to this point, not a mother.
Not a mother.
Oh, there's so many things I wanna say about her, but
Mm,
nonetheless,
yes. Terrible
um,
person.
not a good mom, not a good person in general, but when, he purposely turns his back on her and he's like trying to hide his face,
Right.
right? And then he says the one line
Can't rain all the time.
Eric?
and he pulls the Batman, right? He's just
Yeah.
gone.
He's gone.
He's just
And these he has these moments with these characters. I mean, he's learning his ways of stopping. We, honestly, one of the better parts of this movie is where this movie became tragic in a
yes.
scene. But this scene leads to one of the best lines in the movie where he comes to Shelley's mother and says,
This
like
this
he's
line,
he's gonna take his revenge out on Funboy.
yeah.
And like this is known, like he's screwed. But you and she's like worried she's gonna die, and he grabs a hold of her and yep. And that line is he's taking her, which is Shelley's mother, and drawing the morphine from her veins. Mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children.
Mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children. Do you understand?
Morphine is bad for your daughter is out there on the streets waiting for you.
And I love
That
the way he delivered that line.
chills, dude. The mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of children. That is, man,
Oh, it's
that
thick, man. It is so thick.
thick. It's
And the
crazy.
fact that at this point in the movie, he literally is holding her forehead and he's basically forcing her to look at herself.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Like this is something that transcends everything.
Yep.
Like this is what you are. Like you don't get a choice in this.
Yep.
Do you understand?
Yep.
And it's great where it's she's no longer high. She's sober and she's realizing like I have a kid out there. What am I doing?
Yeah, and that line is so great when he says, "Your daughter is on the streets waiting for you."
Right.
And you could tell it clicked home with her, right? At that point in
Yeah.
time. Oh my
Yeah.
God, what have I been doing? And then of course he takes out Happy
Yeah, Fun Boy. Yeah,
Fun
Fun
Boy.
Boy's done.
Fun Boy.
I do like the line before he shoots him in the bed, and he's like, "Look what you've done to my sheets." It's so great.
What I loved about that scene was when he put his hand over the end of the gun,
Oh,
right? And boom, and he turns his back, and of course, Fun Boy thinks, "I got him." And he's like, "Ah!" And then he starts doing a maniacal laugh and looks at him through the hole in his
Yeah.
hand. I was like, in the theater, I
Oh,
was like, "Oh, oh!"
right.
You would be literally shitting yourself at that point. You'd be
It's
like,
true.
"What the is going
Yeah,
on?"
what is happening here? There's a
Not
lot
just
happening here.
not just because you're higher than a kite, but because you just shot this guy and he's looking at you through the hole in his hand as it closes up.
Right. Right.
Oh.
And we've got some really good bad guys, floating around with
We do.
Top Dollar, Michael Wincott. His voice is perfect for
Yes.
that villain,
Yes.
that Grady kind of gravelly voice. And his whole deal is so weird. Like it's his half sister. I don't even know. I'm
There's
sure
like
there's some kink in there somewhere. It's
there's some
weird.
incest going on there somehow.
Yeah, it's some
uh,
weird stuff, and like they're with, a girl that they're like, oh, I think I broke her.
yeah,
That
which
kind
I
of.
thought that line was flipping awesome.
It's like, oh my God, yeah, you did.
Oh,
Um, and his witch and that half sister being a witch, which in turn kind of helps that story flow in the end where she's the one that knows that he is connected to the bird.
yes.
And her magic is obviously some real because she's seen these things
Yeah.
and how to defeat him.
And I will tell you right now, as far as the cast is concerned, I don't think they could have done any better than Ernie Hudson.
Ernie Hudson, perfect role for he's a beat cop because he was obviously demoted from being a detective. He plays that great role. Right.
You know,
because there was some suppression going on. The corruption, that's what this whole darkness, this whole city is dark. And basically Eric is there to right the wrongs, and it all goes up to this kingpin, Top Dog.
and I will tell
Top
you
Dollar.
right now, not only him, but Tony Todd, the Candyman.
Tony Todd, Candyman, shows up in here.
And the thing that I loved about this, I actually was watching some like behind the scenes making of, and Tony Todd actually created a complete history for who his character was.
Really? He had
Yeah.
a backstory.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh yeah, he
great.
he was a marksman in Vietnam, and he just fell in love with killing, and he brought that home with him, and I mean, just the
Nice.
whole story." And I was like, "Man, that is so cool."
And he
And
comes off as a solid dude. Like he's
yes,
a badass.
He is a badass.
quiet badass.
And John Pilato, who played Gideon, the second victim, if you will,
Right.
he didn't die, but the pawn store
Pawn Store, yeah.
owner. Oh my God, he was he was 100% believable in that role.
Yeah.
It's like you are an idiot
Yeah.
savant.
Yeah, without the savant part.
Without the savant part, exactly. It's like you are, what you imagine as, the persona of, the Italian, Guido,
Yeah.
right, in movies, and man, he was brilliant. He was brilliant. I loved hating his character,
Yeah.
if
Oh,
that
yeah.
makes sense.
Oh, yeah, because he was an asshole to everybody, and,
Uh-huh.
uh, which is a great part when Eric Draven pays him a calling,
Yes.
and he's looking for a ring, and the guy's like, "Man, piss off," and, "No, like, shoot me," and that's you can kinda see that's when Eric realizes that he's bulletproof,
Yeah.
because you get that heal up scene, and
Yeah.
he's just like,
He kinda looks at his chest like,
"Shit," I love that he's sitting there in the chair, "Shit on me, shit
yeah,
on me."
and he takes the knife and stabs through the back of his hand. I mean, oh my gosh.
Stick around.
Yeah, that scene, while everything up to that point was very artistic and pulling you in, that's the one that cemented your shoes to the floor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the brutality, like, I'm here for a reason, and
Yes.
that moment with the rings, like,
Each one of these is a life you helped destroy.
he's buying everyone's stolen shit, whether it was from somebody alive or dead.
And it's funny, my wife had said to me, she said, "Never buy me jewelry from a pawn shop." And like I would ever would, right?
Right.
But I said, "Okay, babe, but you said that so strongly. Why do you feel that way?" And she said, "Because it's dark juju."
It
If you
is. It's even if it's coming from somebody who's just down on their luck. It's a memory that they gave up
Yeah,
in for hard times.
yep.
You
And
know.
and and I and I never thought of it that way, and I was like, "Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Yeah." So
Engagement ring, it's a broken dream, you
yeah,
know.
and I love that he's bouncing them off his chest. Every single one of
Yeah.
these is, and then when he takes what was left and pours them down the shotgun,
Yeah.
when he walks aside and goes, "Do I smell gasoline?" And the guy,
Is that gasoline I smell?
when he shoots it, this is a very artistic
Yeah.
a point here is they show the rings coming out of the. I was like,
They're following the buckshot that's coming.
yeah, I'm
And
like,
yeah.
well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
And that explosion was freaking awesome.
Oh, this is great. Much better than other movies that we've seen recently.
Yeah, much better than the last one we watched, where you and I could probably create the same thing on our computer for less.
Right.
Anyway, but at this point, Brandon's dead, Shelley's dead, his fiance. He's been blessed by the crow to come back. I love that also, the explanation. Sometimes, just sometimes, right? So
Right. Right.
they have really, at this point, if you're still involved, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I find it, fourth to fifth time of seeing this movie. Uh, I find once I get to that scene, I find it very hard to get up to go to the bathroom. I find it very hard to
Yeah,
get.
you're locked in because
Uh,
I mean, because at this point you've got like the cops are trying to find out who this guy is. They found that, Tintin finding Tintin with all of his knives poking out of everywhere. Like they describe it as he in all of his major organs in alphabetical order.
I love that. I love that description when he's like,
That
when he
pretty much covers it. Like, yeah, he's dead. He's
yeah,
gone.
he found himself to have a bad case of the deceased.
Yeah, right.
As dark as this movie was, I still laughed. I was like, "That's funny right there."
Right. Right. And you got these dark, like that darkness that's going on with Dollar and his sister. Like she cuts the eyes out of this girl, and makes some concoction that he breathes the smoke in, and it's all in their magic.
Right.
And he's really feeding into. So you get this real dark vibe. Like these are bad people.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you think that anybody other than David Patrick Kelly could have played T-Bird?
I don't think so. I think it was the perfect role for him.
Yeah.
Right to the end where, like he gets his with, he's everybody blows this off like they remember the murder, but it's what Tintin blows it off is like, oh yeah, I got her good, and
Oh yeah.
and
Yeah.
Funboy's like, oh yeah, I showed her this, and he's like, wait a minute, I know you.
I know you. I know you. I knew you. I knew you.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, that people
I
don't come
love
back.
it.
You can't be you. We put you through the window. There ain't no coming back.
That you could see the fear. Everyone else was trying to show bravado. T-Bird was like, "Oh my God, no!" Because at this point in time, he had seen the rest of his crew being taken out.
Yeah,
And when he's sitting there looking at him, going, "People don't come back." The way he kept yelling that, and man, give David Patrick Kelly a star. The first time I remember seeing him was in a little movie called Dreamscape,
oh yeah. Mm.
which was kind of a Friday the 13th play.
Yep.
Not Friday the 13th. I'm sorry.
Nightmare.
Freddy
Yeah.
Nightmare play. Um, and which also starred George Wendt.
Yeah.
And I remember it when he died. Me and my buddy at the both same time went, "Oh, Norm!" out loud.
You're right.
But this role was like, wow,
Yeah.
wow.
And it
Wow.
was great that the line that he uses to taunt Shelley, uh, with the whole comes back full circle to where he's realized the guy has come back from the dead and is exacting justice by
Yes.
killing him, and he's
Yeah.
going to die, and that abashed as the devil and felt how awful goodness is.
Oh, I love that line.
Oh yeah,
I
nothing
love
says
that
vigilante. Yeah,
line.
nothing says vigilante justice
Uh-huh.
than that line
Yep. When
to
the
a bad guy.
Yeah, when and basically breaking down is the devil felt goodness, and to him how horrible that felt.
Right.
It really does sum up Eric Draven's character and his vigilanteism as a whole, because he's like all these bad guys are now having what they did, in my opinion, multiplied to
Right.
themselves.
Right. I mean, definitely if you're going to drive off the pier with, a couple
One of the
tons of
greatest car explosions I've ever seen put on film.
that was good.
All right, so for those of you who don't know, I've spent my life in the automotive repair industry. I've been a service manager for automotive repair facilities. I've worked in dealerships, so on and so forth, so on, so on, so on. Don't need to go into any detail. But when I saw that my first job in automotive was in the body shop, and when I saw that car explode and the frame and undercarriage separated from the body,
Right.
because you literally see the whole
Comes
frame
apart.
separate like
Yeah.
this. I was like, "Holy crap!" Whoever did this shot knew what they were doing, because I've never seen that before,
Right.
and it was fantastic. Um, I love the fact that they used a late '70s T-Bird that's basically the same body style as an LTD.
Right.
Basically a two-door LTD is all it is,
Yeah.
and put that blower in it, because it's not a car that you see souped up
No.
in film, so it was something different.
Was.
They really thought of a lot of new ways to approach things, and I have to give them credit for that.
Yeah. And leading up to the, I guess, big boss battle, which comes in tears.
And
But
exactly, yeah.
yeah, we've got him coming up against everyone. Um, gunfights. He gets shot so many times.
Oh,
Everyone shoot, and he's just takes all of it. Um,
yes,
to the point of like when he goes and meets with the cop, he meets with Ernie Hudson,
yes,
and you can see that Eric is getting tired. You know, like it's tiring exacting all of this evil. You know,
Right.
like you're fighting fire with fire. So
Exactly.
that brutality that they had, you're giving it back to them threefold.
Absolutely.
And he's kind of like talking to him, you know, as a person that's tired. And that interaction they had was so good where he touches them and gets that like, I saw her through your eyes. You
Yeah.
were there the
Sure.
whole time. And
I was
like,
really hoping she would wake
oh,
up so that I could talk to her about what happened, you know?
yeah, so I could find out
So
who did this. And
so cool.
oh man, it was like, don't touch me. Like that
Yeah.
whole, like, I already felt that.
I don't wanna
And
feel it again. Exactly.
and leading up to, I mean, we've got a great battle with the witch finding out that, you know, the you got to get the bird. If you get the bird, you know,
Right.
he goes down, he loses his powers. So they're shooting the bird, they're trying to protect the bird. We're running around, but that ending to this is it's the pinnacle to revenge.
It is. It is.
To somebody that hurt someone you love that much, to be like, I'm giving you 30 hours of pain all at
All at once.
once.
Oh,
I have something to give you. I don't want it anymore.
oh, such a beautiful
What a way
ending.
to go, man.
Oh, yeah, and I love the fact that you know, the visuals. Okay, so again, the visuals in this movie was so artistic. But when Michael Wincott, top dollar, when he dies and the gargoyle's there with his mouth open and his blood's flowing out with the water,
Right,
such a beautiful scene. And then Sergeant Albright, which is Ernie Hudson. You guys would know Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters.
right,
Says, you know, he looks at his nemesis in the department who he's been fighting with through the whole movie, and he goes, "Oh, by the way, you missed everything. Your guy that you've been looking for is the guy that's dead on the roof." So he basically pins everything on top dollar so that
right.
everyone knows that it's Eric. I was just, I was just like, ah,
Oh,
perfect,
it was a great
perfect.
ending. This movie is like so top. It came out at a great time for, like, for me. I was
It is.
coming out of high school,
Yep.
so movies, we had to see this. I can't tell you how many times I saw it in the theater when it came out, and then when it moved to, we've talked about it before, the Dollar Cinema down there, being able to see it there, it was like instant classic.
So I believe I was 25, 26 when I saw this, and I went during a matinee because you know, I'd heard about it, I'd heard all the things. I kind of pushed it off because I was a Brandon Lee fan before this because
Right.
being the martial arts guy growing up, I loved his movies as a martial artist.
Oh yeah,
And so I kind of pushed this off. I did, you know, with everything, all the tragedy behind it, and Brandon losing his life during the filming and all that. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go see it, so I kind of waited till it was like at the end of its run, and I went to a matinee. And as I'm sitting there waiting for the movie to start, a guy walks in the back door dressed as Eric Draven, head to
all right,
toe, exact. This was before I knew what cosplay was,
right.
and he walked in head to toe dressed like Eric Draven. And I looked at him and I was like, "Man, that's really cool that you have that much uh, love for this movie." And I very quick, and I was by myself. As a matter of fact, none of my friends were really that interested in it because they didn't know anything about it. So I waited till after the movie was over. And by the way, as the credits rolled, I'm 20. As I said, I'm 25-ish, 26 years old. I'm sitting in the theater watching the credits roll up with tears running down my face
Yeah,
because I knew that Brandon Lee was never going to be seen in film for anything ever again, and this was the role. This was the role for him.
true.
So as I'm leaving, I see the guy walking up the aisle, and I asked him. I said, "Sir," I said, "I think first of all, you look beautiful. You look great. I love it. What brought you to this?" He says, "I've been a fan of The Crow since it was a graphic novel." He said, "And I've been a fan of Brandon Lee my whole life. I didn't know it at the time, but years later, I met this guy again in another circumstance, and he was just one of the greatest, nicest people you ever want to meet. And like me, he loved Brandon Lee. He loved his father Bruce Lee, and he loved The Crow. And I will never forget getting to see him. I love it when people cosplay as Brandon Lee and as Eric Draven.
Oh, yeah.
And by the way, as I say that, the same young lady who we saw last week did a wonderful Crow cosplay. I'll show her picture now.
Yeah.
There you go.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very cool.
That's one thing. It's Sting. I was a big wrestling fan, and we got Sting. Now, Sting came from the spandex, hyper colors, like painted up, almost Ultimate Warrior makeup.
Yep.
To we got the Stinger. We got an Eric Draven character in wrestling, and
Absolutely.
it solidified him as top notch because he had that look.
Yep.
That, what are you, a clown or something?
You know the first thing I thought as soon as I saw the makeup.
Mm.
It was Alice Cooper makeup in my mind.
Right.
Right.
Oh, it's just, and it's become, it's funny. Like we're looking down the barrel of a, they don't want to say remake. They want to say reboot ish of The Crow coming. And we'll deal with that when it comes. You like it, don't like it. I'm pretty cool when it comes to horror remakes. We'll see. But
We'll see.
this movie
Some great
will,
ones. There have also been Nightmare on Elm Street.
but like this is one of those movies we didn't need to remake. It's watching this movie now is just as good and would do just as well in the theater as it did back in 94. I mean, it like tripled its budget with its first run, and that's not counting everything that is connected to The Crow since.
No, and it also was not including VHS. That was just first run. That was just
Yeah, that's just theater numbers. It blew away the box office for what it put in.
The thing that I would like to have seen, them wipe everything out after the first one because the rest of them were garbage.
Yeah, it was a series. There was the City of Angels, and this was perfect the way it was. It worked. And when it goes, like I said, translated from the comics, the graphic novel, over into this, carrying enough of it to where it played well with each other.
Because of the way that this was written, where it talks about, sometimes, when people cross over, sometimes the sadness goes with them. And then again, sometimes even more, they get the chance to come back. They could have done this character, not Eric. They could have done the Crow with anyone. All they had to do was write a good story. If they would have wiped everything else between and said Eric Draven was the first,
right?
Skarsgård is the second, created a story around him, I would have been like, let's do this. Right?
I mean, it could be that victim of comic books to movies right now is a lot of translation, some good, mostly good, some bad, and maybe that's the where they bought off on it, that carries that Eric Draven character from. But as we said, like Brandon Lee, if it wasn't iconic and tragic, but however the tragedy that happened, it's one of those things we don't need to speak on so much because everyone else has. We know what happened.
We know,
but because that happened,
plenty out there to find it on, right?
Yeah, because that happened, Paramount was like, well, that movie's over with. And Brandon's fiance
and his
family, everyone that were part of this movie pushed to be like, no, this needs to be seen. Let's finish it. We can do it digitally and we can enhance it. They tried some other ways, but digitally was put in there with body doubles.
And what happened there, to be specific, was that his stunt double played 2 scenes after he had passed.
Right.
And this was the first movie ever that they did digital face swap.
Right.
the actor who was involved, not his fault by any means, but the
Mhm.
actor who was involved that fired the shot that killed him went out of Hollywood for
For a
years
while.
and
Yeah, he didn't really
years.
show back up for. I mean, he came back for some little things, and it wasn't really back into acting. They said
Yep.
that it probably haunted him till his death, and
Yep.
that's sad. But with that
That's it was
tragedy came a
not
push.
his fault.
Because with this tragedy came a push that like people need to see this, and a little company picked it up,
Yep.
which became Miramax for distributing,
Yep.
and they pushed this movie out to actually be released, and it did really well. And it
Did very well.
eventually, I think it was like 20 years later, Paramount acquired Miramax, and now have acquired the movie again.
Yep.
So it comes back to Paramount. But with this tragedy, is it got us this performance by Brandon Lee, which
Was
is the 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 best Crow. He will always be the best Crow. I mean, Skarsgård could do a hell of a bang up job,
and
and I might love
Skarsgård's a
the movie.
great actor, he does great in
Oh
horror, he's
yeah,
great in this type of role. He may be fantastic, and I love Skarsgård. I
oh
do.
yeah.
I love a
I
lot of
can't wait for Nosferatu coming out,
oh,
and you
absolutely.
know, guy's awesome.
And I know this is not necessarily a completely popular opinion, but I thought Pennywise was fantastic with him. Um, that all being said, I don't care how great he is. I was sat in the theater watching Brandon Lee as a 25-year-old crying because I knew I'd never see him in another film again.
Yeah.
Not bawling as a but tears running and being like, dude, I loved this guy before this. I loved his father. I loved what they stood for in Hollywood,
Yeah.
and the boundaries that they broke in Hollywood. And there'll never be another Eric Draven in my book. It'll be it Chris, I tell you what, it'll take you coming to me and going, "Dude, you need to go see this movie." Because if not, I'll
Yeah.
probably avoid it like the plague because it hurts me to think of anyone else playing this role. It just
Yeah.
does. And I will say this also, while we're talking. We wanna dedicate this episode to the 30 years anniversary of The Crow. We wanna dedicate this to Brandon and his family and say thank you for allowing this to come out.
This movie, it hit for the action and the cinematography for it. But the performance by Brandon Lee in assuming the role of Eric Draven really just it was so good, and it's still so good. I watched it again today. Um, yeah, it's just it's a iconic, and it will always be. It's one of those movies as a teenager when it came out that it's in our generation to where
Yep,
like this is our another one of those contributions to that horror hall of fame
yep,
that
yep.
this belongs there.
I don't know if this movie's even horror, even though it has a lot of horror elements to it. I call The Crow horror adjacent because
It
it
is.
it draws a lot of the zombie back
The
from the
darkness, the witch,
yes,
the
the witch,
magic.
all that stuff. But it's a movie that non-horror fans can watch.
Uh, yeah, this I those iconic shots. The crow in flames from the lighter fluid,
Oh, great.
as he sits at the tail as it comes up on fire. It's great. The moment where he's looking out of the apartment, and the storm is rolling in, and he's come to the realization like I'm back.
When he the first scene when he's back in the apartment and he's kind of reliving those memories and he grabs the frame of the window and swings out, and
Yeah,
swings back in and twists and land.
yeah.
That is one of the most beautifully shot scenes I've ever seen in any film. I was like, "Wow." I was struck with it the first time I saw it,
Right?
all the way through to today when I saw it again after all these years later and all the times I've seen it, I still went, "Wow."
Right. Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Great, great, great scene.
Great moment. There's so many great moments in this. I I'm making a TikTok with a bunch of pictures that from the movie just because they're just shots of Brandon in makeup, or uh, a lot of fan renderings of Eric Draven, um,
Yes.
as and it's funny that all of them are seem to be based on the Brandon Lee Eric Draven, not from the comic book, not but what his character was because he is the Crow, and Obar did a great job with a great storyline,
Really
original.
great. Great.
Um, but Brandon's your guy, whether you like it or not. That's who he looks like, and
I
that's
agree.
it works, man. This whole movie works right to the end. It's just where the little girl knows that the neighbors she had are at peace. The brutality that she know that they went through has been rectified, and now they're together.
The whole story comes together with the little girl saying, that love is forever, and
Yeah,
true love is forever. It's
yeah. The whole movie. I mean, from start to finish, we're being told a love story. Within a brutal world,
yep.
and we find out not only are we told this love story, but we learn that love transcends everything. It's
Yes.
eternal,
Yes,
and that pulls on your heartstrings.
it does.
And it makes this movie special, makes the story special. It's one of those movies. It's iconic. It will be, you know, it deserves to be put up there.
Well, I can tell by our conversation today that this movie is high in reverence to you as it is to me, and I kind of had the feeling that it would be. I would have been actually, to be honest with you, Chris, I would have been disappointed if it wasn't. But
Yeah,
I'm
it's one of those movies. What do you mean you don't like?
yeah, no,
Wrong with you?
I, this is a movie who, again, my wife doesn't care for horror. I would love to have her sit down with me and watch this, and then at the end, explain to her. Um, how did you like that love story? And see how she reacts to that question.
Right. And it's a good story where life is hard, man. Life is brutal.
Yes.
So this movie, while it is in your face at times, it's telling you that no matter how bad it gets, no matter how bad it is, doesn't change the love you have.
No.
And that's a beautiful thing right there.
Beautiful, beautiful thing. And I will say this as my friend. I love you, dude, and I appreciate you, and I'm glad that you signed on to this crazy wheel that we are here at Grave Reviews, and you make this job so much fun,
Oh,
so much fun.
oh, well, I love you too.
You too, dude. I figured, what can we do, right? At the end of the crow, but
Right,
true love story is to say that, right?
right. So
That
sometimes horror is a love story.
sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. That being said, great conversation, man. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to say to everybody tonight?
Well, if you are here in the chat while we're premiering this on Tuesday's Terrors, um, once it's over, go down there, hit the sub if you haven't already. Ring that bell so that way we tell you when we go live. Leave a comment, helps with the algorithm, gets us out there, gets us sharing. Share, share, share. 250 subs. We're going to do a giveaway.
Yes,
Um,
some really cool stuff
there's
too.
some cool merch, some cool one of a kind type merch. Not many out there.
Yep.
We're gonna do something cool about that, and go to bio.link/graverev. That'll give you all the links to all our socials, our TeePublic site, with all of our merch on there as well. And well, it can't rain all the time,
No,
you
it
know.
Chris, I appreciate you, buddy. Ladies and gentlemen, as we always like to say here at Great Reviews, as we're tying things up, until we see each other again, which should hopefully be Thursday night when we talk about happy birthday
Happy
to
birthday to
me, me. And that being said, may all your nightmares be groovy.